"This is Mandarin. I dare you to translate it," challenged the millionaire. But the poor janitor silenced him instantly. Eleanor Ellie Johnson would never forget that Tuesday. Not because it was special, Tuesdays never were, but because it was the day her silence finally broke. The clock read 2:23 p.m. when she pushed her cleaning cart into the 23rd floor conference room of the Sterling Tower in Midtown Manhattan. The scent of varnished mahogany furniture mixed with the chemical odor of the industrial cleaner she had been using for 5 months. Ever since she landed that grueling $1,900 a month job. Her hands, dry and rough from constant contact with harsh soap, gripped the microfiber cloth with the precision of someone who had learned there was no room for error. One smudge left behind, one complaint registered, and she could join the hundreds of thousands of unemployed in New York City. She was 56, too thin not by choice but because ramen stretched the budget better than rice and meat. Her dark skin, the deepest shade she inherited from her maternal grandmother, carried the marks of a person who caught 2 buses before sunrise. Her eyes, however, were different. When she forgot to lower them, that automatic reflex the invisible develop, there was an intelligence there that didn't match the frayed beige uniform. She was wiping down the long conference table when she heard voices in the hall. Male voices, loud, confident. The kind of confidence that comes from never having worried about the rent. "It needs to be ready by Friday, no excuses," said the voice Ellie immediately recognized. Harrison Sterling III, CEO of Sterling Tech Solutions. 52 years old, perfectly tailored salt and pepper hair. A watch that cost more than 3 years of her salary. She saw him every day, but he never saw her. People like Harrison didn't see people like Ellie. The door swung open forcefully. Harrison entered, followed by 4 suited executives, all carrying leather briefcases and the air of people who solved multi-million-dollar problems, while she cleaned up the mess they left behind. Ellie instinctively retreated to the corner, trying to become even more invisible. "Excuse me, sir," she murmured, head down, starting to gather her supplies. "I'm just leaving. Don't bother," Harrison replied without even glancing at her, tossing a file folder onto the table. "Continue your work. Just be quiet about it." The other men sat down. Harrison remained standing, dominating the space, as he always did. Ellie continued cleaning, slow, methodical, using the technique she had developed of cleaning without seeming to be there. But her ears didn't stop working. "The problem is this document," Harrison was saying, pulling papers from the folder and spreading them across the table. "The Chinese sent the final contract, but my translator is hospitalized. Pneumonia, and I can't get another certified one in under 2 weeks." Ellie froze for half a second. Only half a second, but something inside her stirred. Her eyes, betrayed by the curiosity of a lifetime of learning, slid towards the table. Ideograms, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect columns on letterhead stamped with the characteristic red seal of official Chinese documents. "Hire someone else," said one of the executives, a man with glasses named Arthur Bennett, the CFO. "Pay whatever it takes." "I tried. Every certified translator in NYC is fully booked. Corporate events, conferences. One guy quoted me $45,000 to prioritize. The nerve of that. Isn't there anyone in the company itself?" asked another younger man, Liam Kelly. "Any employee who understands Chinese?" Harrison let out a dry laugh. "Are you kidding? Half the staff here barely speaks decent English, let alone Mandarin." It was at that moment that it happened. Ellie couldn't explain afterward what possessed her. Maybe it was the 6 years of silence. Maybe it was the arrogance in that laugh. Maybe it was the dozens of times she had heard comments like that, always presuming that people like her were incapable of anything beyond cleaning, serving, disappearing. She approached the table. 2 steps. Her eyes scanned the document. "That contract has problematic clauses in Section 3, she said. The silence that fell over the room was so absolute that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like a roar. 5 heads spun simultaneously in her direction. Harrison stared at her as if she had just materialized out of thin air, which to him was essentially true. "What did you say?" His voice was low, dangerous. Ellie felt cold sweat track down her back. She needed this job. She needed that $1,900 that barely paid for utilities, rent, and helped with her daughter's college expenses. But the words were out, and there was no putting them back. The document, sir. It's an intellectual property transfer agreement. Section 3 specifies that. You read Chinese? Harrison interrupted. There was something in his voice now. Not curiosity, disbelief, and beneath it something darker. Irritation. Yes, sir. Standard Mandarin. This document is in simplified script, but it uses some variants of. Anyone can pretend to understand scribbles, Harrison said, snatching the paper. He held it up in the air, as if it were a weapon. This is Mandarin. I bet you can't translate a line. He said this looking at the executives, a sneer curving his lips. The others smiled back. That kind of smile powerful people share when something amuses them at the expense of someone inferior. Ellie looked at the document. 3 seconds. Her brain processed the characters with the muscular speed of someone who had done it daily for years. By this private instrument of rights assignment, the parties above qualified have justly agreed and contracted the following: Guangzhou Tech International, hereinafter referred to as the assignee, acquires from Sterling Tech Solutions, hereinafter referred to as the assignor, all intellectual property rights pertaining to the technologies of. Stop! Harrison's voice cut the air like a blade. Ellie stopped. Her eyes met his. The sneer had vanished from the CEO's face. In its place was something she recognized because she had seen it before many times. The fear of the POW. A fool man confronted by what he cannot control. How did you? He began, but Arthur Bennett interrupted him. Boss, she could be making it up. No offense. He glanced at Ellie with that false politeness that is worse than a direct insult. But anyone can memorize a few phrases and pretend that. Choose any paragraph, Ellie said. Her voice was low. She still needed this job, but firm. Any line of the document. I will translate it. The silence returned. Harrison stared fixedly at her. Ellie could see the calculation happening behind those eyes. If he accepted and she proved genuine competence, his authority would be questioned. Why didn't the CEO know he had someone capable here? Why was he about to pay $45,000 when he could solve it for free? But if he refused, he would look cowardly in front of his team. Pride 1. Second page. Last paragraph, Harrison said, flipping the paper and pointing. Ellie read in silence. Then she translated, word for word, including the legal nuances, the references to Chinese commercial laws, the deadlines specified in the Chinese lunar calendar converted to the Gregorian one. When she finished, the only sound in the room was the breathing of 6 people. The younger executive, Liam Kelly, whispered, "Holy cow!" Harrison snatched the document from Ellie's hands violently. The paper tore slightly at the corner. "Anyone can make anything up," he said, but his voice was too strained. "Without verification, those words mean nothing. Get out of here and get back to your work." It was not a request. It was an order. Ellie lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." She grabbed her cart and left, feeling 5 pairs of eyes burning her back. The door closed behind her, but through the frosted glass, she heard fragments of the conversation that exploded. Obviously, she studied. Check if she... It can't be. Ellie pushed the cart down the hallway, her hands shaking. She had just done the most foolish thing in her life. Low-level workers don't contradict the boss. They don't demonstrate being more competent than him. They don't humiliate him, even unintentionally, in front of his subordinates. She was screwed. But as she stepped into the tiny service elevator she always used, cleaning staff weren't allowed to use the main lifts. Ellie felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. A spark. Tiny, almost imperceptible. That maybe, just maybe, she could be more than invisible. The next 3 days were the strangest of Eleanor Johnson's life in the Sterling Tower. On Wednesday morning, while cleaning the 10th floor restrooms, Chloe Davies, the executive secretary from the 5th floor who had always been minimally polite, approached her in the hallway. The woman looked around, making sure they were alone, before whispering, "Ellie, you really speak other languages?" Ellie hesitated. Yes, ma'am. A few. English. Yes. Chloe pulled a folded paper from her blazer. I got this email from an American supplier. My English is bad. Really bad. And if I ask the communications department, they'll know I lied on my resume about fluency. She held out the paper with nervous hands. Could you? It doesn't have to be now. Whenever you can. Please. Ellie took the paper. It was a printed email about renegotiating payment deadlines. Technical, but not impossible. I can do it during my lunch break, Ellie said. But ma'am, wouldn't it be better? Thank you. Chloe briefly squeezed Ellie's arm and rushed off, heels tapping on the marble. On Thursday, it was the IT manager who, accidentally, left a Spanish manual in the recycling bin next to his desk. Ellie found it while emptying the trash. The pages were clean, unmarked, clearly never used as actual trash. She translated the most important parts and left, equally accidentally, a paper with the handwritten translations on Robert Greene's desk the next day. On Friday, when Ellie arrived for her 7 a.m. shift, there was a small box of chocolates at her workstation in the basement, along with an unsigned note. Thanks. She didn't eat the chocolates. She took them home for her daughter, Brianna, who was studying for her constitutional law final and needed the sugar more than she did. But more than the small interactions, what Ellie noticed was something more subtle. People looking at her, truly looking, not with contempt or indifference, but with curiosity. Sometimes, when she entered a room to clean, conversations no longer stopped automatically. Secretaries greeted her by name. Junior analysts said good morning. It was disconcerting. And Harrison Sterling III? He didn't appear once on the floors Ellie cleaned that week. She knew, from the conversations she overheard, that he was in the building. But it was as if he was avoiding her. Or maybe she was being paranoid. It was the following Saturday, during her day off, that the penny dropped. Ellie was in line at the grocery store with Brianna when her 19-year-old daughter, tall and determined in a way Ellie had never been able to be, said, "Mom, that woman is staring at you." Ellie turned. 3 people back in line was Chloe, the secretary. When their eyes met, Chloe waved shyly. In the parking lot, after they both paid for their groceries, Chloe caught up to her. "Sorry to bother you on your day off, Ellie," she said, carrying 2 heavy bags toward a beat-up Nissan Sentra. I wanted to thank you. Really, that translation saved my job. The American supplier was threatening to break the contract because of misunderstandings in the email, and I managed to clarify everything. It was nothing, ma'am. Chloe. Please call me Chloe. She put the bags in the trunk. And it was something. Listen. She looked around again. That conspiratorial habit. Things at the office are weird. Since that day in the conference room, Harrison Sterling is different. How different? Nervous. He hired a super expensive translator, 45 grand, just to verify that Chinese document. And guess what? Chloe lowered her voice. You were right. Completely right. Every word you translated matched what the certified translator confirmed. Ellie felt something cold trickle down her spine. He knows. I think so. And I think he's terrified. Because if a janitor is more competent than him at something, what other secrets are circulating in the building while he pretends everything is under control? It was on a Monday, 2 weeks after the conference room incident, that Ellie found the papers. She was cleaning the 17th floor, the legal department, when she saw the recycling bin overflowing next to one of the printers. Sheet after sheet, some with only 1 line printed, others ripped in half. Waste that made her wince. At her house, paper wasn't thrown away like that. She started collecting, compacting it to fit in the plastic bag, when the letters on one of the fragments caught her attention. Chinese ideograms. Ellie stopped. Her heart pounded. She looked around. It was 10:15 p.m. The department was empty. Even the floor security guard was on patrol elsewhere. With hands that shouldn't have been shaking, it was just trash after all. She began assembling the fragments. There were many. Some were pieces of the original document Harrison had presented. Others were translations. Ellie crouched down beside the bin, her analytical mind recognizing patterns. She arranged the papers on the hallway floor like puzzle pieces, a habit from the time she taught translation students how to reconstruct texts. Half an hour later, she had an almost complete picture, and what she saw made her forget to breathe. The official translation, the one that cost $45,000, was wrong. Not a small mistake, not a lost nuance. A grotesque, catastrophic error, the kind that destroys companies. Clause 3, the same one Ellie had identified as problematic, clearly stated in Chinese. The assignor transfers all intellectual property rights, including but not limited to patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets, irrevocably and without additional remuneration beyond the symbolic value of 100 yuan. But the translation Harrison had received said, the assignee transfers recognition of intellectual property rights, with an exclusive license for patent use, subject to a 2% royalty payment on annual gross revenue. It was the opposite. If Harrison signed that contract, believing he was selling a license for use with 2% royalties, he would actually be handing over everything. The soul of the company, its innovations, its decades of technological development for 100 Chinese yuan, the equivalent of about $15. Ellie read and reread 3 times. 5. It had to be wrong. A certified, expensive translator wouldn't make a mistake like that. Unless it wasn't a mistake. Unless it was fraud. She looked at the papers again. At the bottom of one of them, a signature, certified translation by Li Zhang, ATA registration 4521. And there, scribbled by hand in small letters by someone from the legal department, check credentials, Li Zhang inactive since 2019. Ellie gathered all the papers, folded them, put them in the worn handbag she carried everywhere. For 3 nights, Eleanor Johnson barely slept. She spread the papers on the tiny kitchen table in the 2-room apartment she shared with Brianna in East New York, Brooklyn. The place had ceiling leaks, the refrigerator rattled too loudly, and the shower only worked if you hid it in a specific way. But it was theirs. Or at least it would be, when she finished paying the overdue rent. Brianna found her early in the morning on the 2nd night, still with the papers spread out. "Mom, you didn't sleep again?" "I'm thinking." "About what?" Brianna sat down on the other side of the table, wearing an old university hoodie that was one of the donated items they received from the church. The girl had her mother's eyes, intelligent, penetrating, but the stubbornness was all her father's. Ellie explained. The translation, the error, the implications. "Then let him crash and burn," Brianna said without hesitation. "Mom, that man humiliated you, in front of everyone. He treats you like you're nothing. And now you're going to save him. It's not about him. It's about doing the right thing?" Brianna laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Life doesn't reward doing the right thing, Mom. You did the right thing your whole life. You worked honestly, taught, built a career. And when Dad died and those loan sharks came after you, did anyone help you? Did anyone care about doing the right thing?" Ellie closed her eyes. The mention of her husband still hurt, even 6 years later. Julian Johnson had been a good man, history professor, funny, dedicated. They met at Columbia, when Ellie was finishing her master's in linguistics and he was starting his PhD. They married in a simple ceremony. Brianna was born a year later. For 13 years, it was everything Ellie ever wanted. 2 university professors building a life together. Their own apartment in Astoria. A simple but functional car. A trip to China when Ellie won an exchange scholarship and Julian managed to accompany her. Plans to buy a house with a yard. Then Julian had the aneurysm. He went out to buy bread on a Sunday morning and collapsed on the sidewalk, dead before reaching the hospital. Ellie only discovered the debts a month later. Julian had co-signed for a childhood friend who had taken out a loan to start a business. The business failed. The friend disappeared. And the creditors, fierce and legal, came after her. $150,000 in debt she didn't accrue. In 6 months, Ellie lost the apartment, the car, the savings, everything to pay what she legally owed as a spouse. The depression arrived like an avalanche. She took a medical leave from the university. The leave ended. She couldn't go back. Her replacement was made permanent. When she finally climbed out of the depths and attempted a return, her credit was ruined. No institution would hire her, not even for private tutoring. At 50, a professor with a master's degree, Ellie found herself cleaning restrooms to survive. "I remember everything, honey," Ellie said softly, looking at the papers. "I remember every person who slammed the door in my face. Every sorry, no openings. I remember. Then why? Because if I let that man sign that contract knowing what I know, I become exactly what he thinks people like me are: lazy, bad, incompetent. And I am not that. I never was. Not even when I was cleaning vomit out of an office restroom. Dig. Nighty, Brianna, is not what others do for you. It's what you do despite them." Brianna was silent for a long moment. Then, in a softer voice, "All right, Mom, do what you think is right. But do it anonymously. Don't expose yourself." Ellie nodded. On Thursday morning, Eleanor Johnson delivered a blank white envelope with no return address to the legal department. She left it on the receptionist's desk when the woman went to the restroom. Inside, a simple sheet of paper with a message written in capital letters. "Verify the translation of the Chinese contract with Guangzhou Tech. There are critical errors in Clause 3 and 7. The translator Li Zhang has not held active ATA registration since 2019. This is fraud." A concerned employee, she stapled copies of the most important fragments she had found in the trash to the envelope. Ellie expected maybe a discreet verification, a quiet investigation, an anonymous thank you in reverse. What she didn't expect was the paranoia. Harrison Sterling III, already suspicious since the incident 2 weeks ago, received the alert as confirmation of his worst fears. There was industrial espionage in the company. By Friday afternoon, when Ellie arrived for her shift, the building was in turmoil. Extra security guards patrolled every floor. Cameras were being reviewed, and one by one, employees were called into meetings with human resources. At 8 p.m., it was Ellie's turn. She was escorted to a room on the 22nd floor she had never entered before. Harrison was there, along with the HR director, Angela Fernandez, and 2 suited men who were clearly lawyers. "Sit down," Harrison ordered. His words were sharp. Ellie sat, her sweaty hands clutching the strap of her handbag. "We received an anonymous tip regarding confidential company matters," Angela began, her voice professional but cold. "The tip demonstrates access to privileged information. We want to know how this person obtained that information." "I don't know, ma'am. The cameras show you on the 17th floor, near the legal printer, the Monday before last. For 40 minutes. A long time to clean a recycling bin," Harrison said. He leaned over the table. "What were you doing?" Ellie felt the cold sweat. "I was organizing the recycling, sir. There was a lot of paper. I sorted it for collection." "Confidential paper?" "I don't read the papers, sir. I just collect the trash." "But you read Chinese, don't you?" One of the lawyers spoke for the first time. "You demonstrated understanding of complex documents. It would be very convenient if someone with those skills had access to information about Chinese contracts. Wouldn't it?" "I didn't read anything that wasn't." "You expect us to believe," Harrison interrupted, "that a janitor fluent in Mandarin, which is absurd enough on its own, wouldn't take the opportunity to sell privileged information? How much did they pay you? How much is our intellectual property worth on the black market?" "Sir, I would never. I can't trust any of you." Harrison stood up abruptly. "Angela, I want the entire cleaning team terminated. Today. Everyone. I will not risk the security of my company because of a—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Ellie understood perfectly what he didn't say. "That's illegal," Ellie said, her voice trembling but firm. "You have no proof. None. Termination without just cause requires. Violation of confidentiality is just cause." The lawyer cut in. "And if you sue, you'll have to explain to a judge how a janitor has knowledge of international contracts. How favorable does that look for you?" Ellie remained silent. She was escorted out of the building 20 minutes later, along with 6 other equally confused and frightened cleaning staff. All terminated. all guilty by association. On the sidewalk, as the guard collected their IDs, Ellie looked up at the illuminated windows of the 23rd floor. She had tried to do the right thing, and now she was unemployed. And you, what would you do? If you had tried to help the person who humiliated you and were punished for it? Leave the word dignity in the comments if you believe doing the right thing is worth it, even when it hurts. And subscribe to the channel to find out what happens next. Because Ellie's story is far from over. 3 weeks. That's how long Ellie's savings lasted. She had $2,500 tucked away, the result of 6 months of cutting every penny, eating ramen, never buying a new blouse. Rent was $1,500. Electricity, $120. Water, $85. Brianna's college expenses, even with grants, were $300. Food for 2 people for a month, if she was very careful, for $100. In the first week, Ellie knocked on every employment agency she knew. The answer was always the same. Without references, it's difficult. Or worse. At 56 and a termination for cause on your record, companies prefer younger candidates. Code for "you're too old and too problematic." In the second week, she started cleaning houses for day rates. $150 for 8 hours of backbreaking work in houses of people who didn't even offer a glass of water. When she was lucky, she got 3-day rates a week for $150, less than half of what she earned before. In the third week, the electricity was cut off. Ellie was at a bus stop in East New York, returning from an especially humiliating day rate. The homeowner had checked every item in the pantry before she left, implying that people like her stole food. When her old phone rang, it was Brianna. "Mom, the electricity disconnect notice arrived. We didn't pay the bill." "I know, honey. I'll figure it out." "How?" "Mom, you're working harder than before and earning half." "We need to." "No." Ellie cut in firm. "You are not dropping out of college. That conversation is over." "But..." "Bria, please. This is the one thing I asked you never to do. No matter what happens to me, you finish that degree. You are going to be a lawyer. You are going to have the future I haven't been able to give you until now. Please." Silence on the other end. Then softly, "Okay, Mom, but let me at least work part-time." "Does it interfere with your studies?" "No." "Then fine." When Ellie hung up, she realized she was crying. Right there at the bus stop with other people. Watching. She had done everything right. Worked honestly. Tried to do what was right. And look where it had led her. At 56, with no power at home, having to let her 19-year-old daughter work to help with the bills. It was the darkest night of Eleanor Johnson's life. Literally. Without electricity, she and Brianna took cold showers and ate crackers by the candlelight a neighbor lent them. "I'm sorry, honey," Ellie murmured in the dark. "For what?" "For everything." Brianna reached out and squeezed her mother's hand in the dark. "You're the strongest person I know, Mom. We'll get through this." In the 5th week after the termination, something changed. Ellie was at the bus stop on 5th Avenue. She had secured a day rate in an apartment in the Upper East Side. When someone called her name, "Ellie," she turned. It took her 3 seconds to recognize Chloe Davies, the secretary. The woman looked different outside the corporate environment, younger in jeans and a t-shirt. "Hi, Chloe. I heard what happened. It's ridiculous. We all know you were scapegoats." Chloe approached, voice low. "You know what's more ridiculous? That anonymous tip was right. The translation was fraudulent. Harrison suspended the contract, but he refused to hire another translator. Pride. And now the Chinese are furious." "Not my problem," Ellie said, too tired to feel satisfied. "But it might be." "Ellie, the Chinese partners are coming to the US, personally, in 2 weeks. And our certified translator, the one they finally hired, a new one, is hospitalized. Severe pneumonia." Ellie felt something stir in her chest. "So?" "And the company is desperate. $40 million depend on this negotiation. $40 million. If it goes wrong, Sterling Tech could go bankrupt. Like I said, not my problem." "But Ellie, you..." "I what? I'm an unemployed janitor, remember? That's what your boss decided." I have nothing to do with his company's problems. Chloe seemed like she wanted to say more, but Ellie had already gotten on the bus. But the universe, it seems, has a sense of irony. 2 days later, at the same bus stop, Ellie had another encounter. A young man, about 28, a well-cut suit but without the arrogance of the executives she knew, stopped in front of her. "Mrs. Eleanor Johnson?" She immediately tensed. "Who's asking?" "My name is Ryan Sterling. I'm the vice president of Sterling Tech, and Harrison Sterling's son." Ellie said nothing. Ryan looked uncomfortable. Good, she thought. "May I sit?" He pointed to the bus stop bench. Ellie shrugged. They sat in silence for a moment. Ryan looked at her with a strange expression, almost like recognition. "I know you," he finally said. "You saw me being thrown out of the building a few weeks ago," Ellie replied dryly. "No, before. It took me a while, but I finally remembered." He took his cell phone out of his pocket, tapped it, and showed her the screen. It was an old photo 10 years ago, an MBA graduating class. Among them, a younger Ryan, and next to him, smiling, a professor Ellie recognized. It was herself. 10 years and a lifetime ago. Professor Eleanor Johnson, Linguistics and Translation, Columbia University. Ryan said quietly, "You were my thesis advisor for my paper on intercultural communication. I got an A. You said it was one of the best papers you had ever advised." Ellie swallowed. "That was a long time ago. I looked it up. After I saw you at that bus stop, something bothered me. So I went digging." He showed more screens. Her old academic resume, which was still in a university database somewhere. Publications, conferences, double masters in literature and Mandarin, 5 years teaching simultaneous interpretation, participation in international conferences, awards, and then 6 years ago everything stopped. Silence. "Why?" Ryan asked gently. Ellie wasn't going to answer. She owed this man nothing. But maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was because he had been her student once and remembered her. Maybe it was because she was so terribly tired of carrying everything alone. She told him about Julian, the aneurysm, the debts, losing everything, the depression, the fall. "I was 50, black, ruined credit, a 2-year gap in my resume with a history of psychiatric leave," she finished, her voice hoarse. "No one would hire me, not even to give private English lessons. People looked at my name, my address in East New York, my color, and decided I was too much of a risk. Or they just moved on to the next candidate. Younger, whiter, without baggage. So you took a job as a janitor. I needed to eat. My daughter needed to continue studying. You do what you have to do." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was laced with something Ellie couldn't identify. "My father doesn't know this. I don't see why he should. Because he fired you unjustly. Because you tried to save the company and were punished for it. Because..." Ryan took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I came here to make a proposition." Ellie turned to face him. "No. You don't even know what. No. Whatever it is, no. I am not going back to that building. I am not working for your father. Not for free, and certainly not while he treats me like a criminal. It wouldn't be for him. It would be for me. Freelance. A job. The meeting with the Chinese. $50,000 for 3 days of work." Ellie felt the air leave her lungs. $50,000. It was more than she had earned the entire previous year. It was electricity for 2 years. It was Brianna's tuition secured. It was dignity. Why? Because the company will sink without this negotiation. And because I researched a half-dozen translators in New York, and none have a tenth of your specific experience. You did an exchange in Shanghai, lived there for a year, studied regional dialect variations as part of your master's. The CEO coming is from Shanghai. She will speak with a regional accent that most translators won't catch. It was true. Ellie knew it was true. And your father? He can't know. Officially, you will be presented as an independent consultant I hired through an agency. No mention of the past. So you want me to be invisible again? Ellie said. Bye. Except this time, invisible with purpose. Ryan had the decency to look ashamed. I know it's not fair, but it's what I can offer. $50,000. And at the end, if everything goes well, an official letter of recommendation from me, publicly acknowledging your qualifications. As the company's vice president. That opens doors. Ellie thought about Brianna having to work part-time while studying. She thought about the power being cut off. She thought about cleaning the houses of people who treated her like a potential criminal. She thought about being 56 and having no prospect of improvement. 3 days, she finally said. I prepare, I run the meeting, I deliver the work. And you pay me half up front. $25,000 now, $25,000 later. And yes, 3 days. Do you accept? Ellie wanted to say no. She wanted to have enough pride to send that young man and his offer away with him. But pride didn't pay the rent. I accept. The 10 days between acceptance and the meeting were filled with intense preparation. Ryan sent all the materials to Ellie's private email, which she hadn't used for years and had to rediscover the password for. Contracts, technical specifications, history of the Chinese company, profiles of the executives who would be coming. Ellie studied every page as if her life depended on it. Because it did. She reactivated dormant knowledge, reviewed technical terminology, practiced simultaneous interpretation alone in the apartment, using YouTube videos of Mandarin conferences, studied the specific technology sector, read about Chinese protocol etiquette. She practiced until she dreamed in Mandarin. Brianna watched her with a mixture of pride and sadness. It's strange to see you like this, the girl said one night, while Ellie was making notes. Like what? Like you used to be. Professor, scholar, someone who loves what they do. Brianna hesitated. I barely remember you like this, Mom. I was 13 when everything fell apart. And since then, you're always so tired. But now, watching you study, it's like you've come back to life. Ellie felt her eyes well up. That was the worst part, you know? Not the poverty, not the hard labor, but feeling like a part of me died. The part that loved to learn. The part that was good at something. 6 years cleaning restrooms, and I almost started believing that was all I was capable of. But it's not. No. But the world almost convinced me it was. The day before the meeting, Ryan sent Ellie a suit. Simple, black, but well cut and new. Also new glasses, hers were 5 years old. And a note. You need to look professional. I trust you. Ellie tried on the suit. Fit perfectly. She looked at herself in the steamed-up bathroom mirror. Hair pulled back in an elegant bun. New glasses. A suit that made her look like who she used to be. For a moment, just a moment, she saw the professor again. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, the same day of the week as the first humiliation, Ellie noted with irony. She arrived at the building at 1:30 p.m., entering not through the service door she had used for 6 months, but through the main reception. The security guard at the door didn't even blink. She was invisible again, but this time because she looked like someone who belonged there. Ryan met her in the lobby. Ready? How much am I allowed to say? What's necessary? Nothing more. And if my father asks directly about your past, be vague. Lie, you mean? Omit. Ellie took a deep breath. Let's go. The 23rd floor conference room was unrecognizable. They had set up a formal configuration with microphones, a projection screen, and water and coffee in silver stations. 8 chairs on each side of a long table. Harrison was there, talking to his executives. When Ryan and Ellie entered, he looked briefly in her direction. Ellie saw the exact moment something shifted in his expression. A frown. Did he know her from somewhere? But it was only a second. He returned to his conversation, giving last-minute instructions. Ryan approached his father. Dad, this is the specialized Mandarin consultant, Eleanor Santos. She will be interpreting. Ryan used her original surname to make her less recognizable. Santos, Harrison repeated. He looked at Ellie again, more lingeringly this time. That name, have we met before? Ellie's heart stopped. I don't believe so, sir, she said, her voice controlled. I haven't worked at many tech companies. Harrison didn't seem convinced, but he had more important things on his mind. Are you good? Very, Ryan said before Ellie could answer. One of the best in New York for specialized Mandarin. Expensive. Necessary. Harrison nodded. Then don't disappoint me. These Chinese are already suspicious because of the delay. One single mistake and we lose everything. Understood, Ellie said. She sat in the interpreter's designated chair, in the middle of the table, from where she could see and hear both the American and the Chinese side that would arrive. 5 minutes later, the receptionist announced over the intercom, "The Chinese delegation has arrived. They entered information. 5 people. 4 men in dark suits and red ties, the color of luck. And in front, a woman about 60, short gray hair, gold-rimmed glasses, a posture as straight as steel. Lu Wei, CEO of Guangzhou Tech International." Ellie stood up with the others. Ryan made the introductions in basic English. The Chinese greeted formally, small head bows. Then Lu Wei spoke, and Ellie felt immense relief. It was the Shanghai dialect, yes, full of phrasal nuances that a generic translator would miss. But she knew it, intimately. "We are disappointed with the delays," Lu Wei said in Mandarin, looking directly at Harrison. "Serious business requires serious partners." Ellie translated quickly, capturing not just the words but the tone, the veiled criticism, the embedded warning. Harrison, to his credit, didn't back down. There were unforeseen complications with documentation, but we are now ready to move forward with revised terms. Ellie translated. The meeting began, and it soon became obvious that Ellie was not there just to translate words. The Chinese spoke in layers. 1s. Sentence could mean 3 different things depending on intonation, pause, choice of character. When one of the executives said something that would literally translate as, "The proposed timeline is interesting," Ellie caught the irony and translated. "They find the timeline unrealistic and are questioning our ability to meet it." Harrison blinked. "How do you know?" "It's what he meant, sir. Trust me." Harrison adjusted his response. And Ellie saw Lu Wei nod her head, imperceptibly. The meeting continued for 2 hours. It was exhausting. Every word carried weight. Every nuance mattered. Ellie felt cold sweat on her back, but her voice remained firm, clear, precise. It was in the 3rd hour that it happened. Lu Wei was explaining a complex clause about geographical market distribution when she stopped mid-sentence. She tilted her head, looking at Ellie with renewed attention. "You master the Shanghai dialect," she said in Mandarin, but it was no longer the formal business language. It was a personal observation, almost admiration. Very few Americans can distinguish the regional subtleties. "Where did you learn?" Ellie forgot, for a fatal moment, to translate into English first. She replied automatically in Mandarin. "I did an academic exchange in Shanghai 15 years ago. I studied dialectal variation as part of my master's research in linguistics. Afterward, I taught translation and simultaneous interpretation at the university for a few years." Lu Wei smiled for the first time since she had entered. It was a genuine smile of respect between professionals. "An academic. That explains your precision. In my country, language professors are treated with the highest honor. They are considered guardians of culture." It was only then that Ellie realized her mistake. She had forgotten to translate. She had revealed information she shouldn't have. And Harrison was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Wait," he said slowly, cutting the moment. "You said you were a university professor?" Absolute silence in the room. All eyes, American and Chinese, turned to Ellie. "Yes, sir. For a few years. Before changing careers," Ellie said, trying to sound casual. But Harrison was standing up, approaching, and Ellie saw the exact moment the memory clicked in that brain. "You," he said, voice low, dangerous. "You worked here, cleaning." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Ryan went pale. "Dad, it's not. You were the janitor. The one who translated the document that day. The one who was fired for." Harrison turned to Ryan, comprehension and fury mixing. You hired her. You brought her back. Dad, she is the most qualified person to. She's a fraud. She lied about her qualifications, invaded document privacy, was fired for cause, and now you bring her here. I didn't lie about anything, Ellie said, standing up. Her voice was trembling, but it was from anger now, not fear. I never lied. You never asked. You never wanted to know who I was because people who clean restrooms can't be people with degrees, right? They can't have a history. They can't be more than the uniform they wear. You infiltrated. I worked. I was hired legally, I did my job, and when I saw something wrong, I tried to alert you. And you fired me for it. Lu Wei raised her hand, her voice cutting through the rising shouting. Silence. Both of you. There was absolute authority in that command. Harrison stopped mid-word. Ellie did too. The Chinese CEO looked from Harrison to Ellie and back. When she spoke, it was in careful but clear English. Mr. Sterling, you want me to understand that you hired a woman with a master's degree, academic experience, fluency in multiple languages, to clean restrooms. I didn't know. And when she tried to use that knowledge to help your company, you punished her. And now you are ashamed because you discovered that a low-level employee had competencies you never bothered to discover. It's different, Harrison began. But Lu Wei hadn't finished. She turned to Ellie. Let her finish. Speak. Tell your story. Completely. Ellie looked at Harrison, at Ryan, at all the executives watching. She could lie, minimize, pretend it wasn't a big deal. But 6 years of invisibility, 6 years of being treated as if she didn't matter, of having her degrees and her decades of work erased because she fell into poverty. It all exploded into words she couldn't hold back. I was a professor at Columbia for 5 years. Masters in linguistics and translation. Specialization in Mandarin. I published 3 academic papers. I advised dozens of students, including your son, Mr. Sterling. Ask him. I built an honest career, until my husband died suddenly and left debts I didn't know existed. In 6 months, I lost everything. House, job, future. And when I tried to start over, no one would hire me. Because I was too black, too old, too poor, with too much baggage. So I took the only job I could get, cleaning. And I did that job with dignity. I cleaned 23 floors of your negligence. I cleaned the cigarette butts your executives left in prohibited places. I cleaned the coffee they spilled without apologizing. And when you challenged me with a Chinese document, doubting that someone like me could have knowledge, I proved you wrong. And when I found out your translation was fraudulent and you were about to sign a contract that would destroy your company, I still tried to warn you. Because unlike you, Mr. Sterling, I don't measure people's worth by the clothes they wear or the salary they earn. The silence that followed was so dense that Ellie could hear her own breathing. Harrison's mouth was slightly open. He tried to say something, but couldn't. And then Lu Wei did something unexpected. She started to applaud. Slowly, rhythmically. And then the 4 Chinese executives accompanying her stood up and did the same. In my culture, Lu Wei said, still in English, we have a saying. Genuine gold does not fear fire. You were tested by fire, Mrs. Johnson. You lost everything, were treated as inferior, and still maintained dignity and ethics. This is Jean Z true gold. She turned to Harrison, and now her voice was icy. Mr. Sterling, my company does not do business with people who treat gold Lee. Kutrash. We don't value only profit. We value character, and you have demonstrated none. This negotiation is terminated. What? No. Wait. Harrison stepped forward. $40 million are at stake. You can't. Yes, I can. And I am doing it. Lu Wei picked up her briefcase. Then she pulled out a card and extended it. Not to Harrison, but to Ellie. Mrs. Johnson, my company is opening an office in the United States. We need a director of intercultural communications. Someone who understands our language, our culture, and at the same time knows the American reality. Starting salary, $160,000 annually, plus full benefits, health insurance, performance bonuses. Are you interested? Ellie looked at the card, then at Lu Wei. then at Harrison, who looked like he had been struck by lightning. Yes, ma'am. I am interested. Excellent. My lawyers will prepare the contract. Can you start next week? Lu Wei smiled. We will need someone competent since we clearly won't be working with Sterling Tech. She left. The 4 executives followed her. The door closed behind them with a final sound. Ellie stood there, the card in her hand, feeling as if the world had turned upside down in 5 minutes. Harrison exploded. You destroyed. I didn't destroy anything. Ellie cut in. You destroyed it. The moment you decided that people's worth was based only on where they work. The moment you humiliated me for having knowledge you didn't expect. The moment you fired me for doing the right thing. This is just the universe returning your own actions. Get out. Get out of here before what? Fire me again. Ellie picked up her handbag. Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. I'm already leaving. But this time on my terms. She walked toward the door. Ryan tried to say something, but she stopped him with a wave of her hand. Thank you for the opportunity, Ryan. You're better than your father. I hope you can save the company, but alone without me. The last thing Ellie saw before closing the door was Harrison Sterling III, billionaire, CEO, powerful man, standing in the middle of his conference room, surrounded by shocked, silent executives, looking for the first time in his life completely, totally lost. What just happened was surreal, wasn't it? Ellie was finally seen, recognized, and valued by who really matters. But now what? What happens when you finally receive the justice you deserve? Comment deserved if you are rooting for Ellie. And don't forget to hit the notification bell because you won't want to miss how this story ends. The news exploded in the next 48 hours. First, internally at Sterling Tech. The story leaked through the executives who witnessed the scene. Then one secretary told another. An analyst commented during happy hour. And quickly, the entire 23-story building was buzzing with the narrative. The CEO had humiliated and fired a former university professor working as a janitor. That same woman had tried to save him from fraud, and now his arrogance had cost the company $40 million in contracts. Then the story reached the press. A journalist from a specialized business blog, who knew someone at Sterling Tech, published a piece with an incendiary title, CEO Fires Translator Who Saved Him from Fraudulent Contract and Loses Multi-million-dollar Deal. The article went viral in corporate circles. Then it went viral on X, formerly Twitter. Then on LinkedIn, where HR executives shared it as an example of toxic management and wasted human resources. Then it appeared in major outlets. Sterling Tech went into crisis mode. Press relations tried to manage the damage. Harrison recorded a generic corporate apology video that no one believed. Clients began questioning whether they wanted to do business with a company that treated employees like that. The shareholder board convened an emergency meeting. And in the middle of all this, Eleanor Johnson was home, sitting on the worn sofa, reading and rereading the employment contract Lu Wei's lawyers had sent. $160,000 annually. Health plan. $500 monthly stipend for meals. Housing allowance. Profit sharing. Mom, are you crying? Brianna stood in the doorway of the tiny bedroom, looking concerned. It's a lot, Ellie said, voice choked. It's too much too fast. Brianna sat next to her and hugged her mother. It's not sudden. You always deserved this. The world was wrong. Now it's just a little less wrong. A week later, Ellie received another unexpected call. Mrs. Johnson? This is Richard Fitzgerald, from the Sterling Tech shareholder board. I would like to meet with you personally, if possible. Ellie almost hung up. She owed that company nothing, but curiosity won. What for? To discuss the future of the company, and to offer a formal apology. Can you come to the office tomorrow? At 10 a.m. I'll think about it, Ellie said and hung up, but she went, because part of her needed to see. The same reception where she had entered and left invisible for 6 months. The same security booth where she had changed uniforms. The same elevators she had taken carrying cleaning supplies. But this time, the security guard greeted her. Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. Mr. Fitzgerald is waiting. She was taken not to a conference room, but to the boardroom on the top floor, a place where real decisions were made. 6 men and 2 women were seated around a massive table. Richard Fitzgerald, a man about 65 with white hair, stood up and extended his hand. Mrs. Johnson, thank you for coming. Please sit. Ellie sat, feeling as if she had entered an alternate dimension. I'll get straight to the point, Richard began. The board voted to remove Harrison Sterling from the position of CEO. He will remain on the board, but will no longer have an operational role. Ryan has been promoted to interim CEO. Ellie said nothing, just watched. Second, Richard continued, we would like to offer formal compensation for the damages you suffered: wrongful termination, public humiliation, loss of income. Our legal counsel calculated the amount at $300,000. That sounds like a very specific amount, Ellie said cautiously. It's enough to avoid a labor lawsuit. One of the women, clearly a lawyer, said with brutal honesty. And it's fair, Ellie thought. $300,000. It was a down payment on an apartment. It was security for her and Brianna for years. It was a shield against any future emergency. Third point, Richard said before she could respond. We would like to hire you as a diversity and inclusion consultant. 60 hours annually, $20,000. Help us not to make the same mistakes. Why would I do that? Ellie asked. Why would I help the company that treated me like trash? Because Ryan walked into the room at that moment, looking 10 years older than last week. There are 300 people working in this building, and 60 of them are cleaning, security, maintenance, general services. And I suspect some of those 60 have stories similar to yours. Wasted talent, ignored knowledge, trampled dignity. You can change that. From the inside. Ellie looked at him, at the board, at everything that room represented. I accept the compensation, she finally said, and I accept the consultancy, but with one condition. The entire cleaning team that was terminated with me must be rehired with formal apologies and proper skills assessments. Maybe you'll discover you have more hidden talents. Done, Ryan said immediately. Richard nodded. We will prepare the contracts. When Ellie left the building an hour later, 3 signed contracts in her handbag, she paused on the sidewalk. Across the street, at the small cafe where low-level employees grabbed $2 coffee, she saw Chloe. The secretary was sitting alone, looking at her phone. Ellie crossed the street. May I sit? Chloe nearly dropped her coffee. Mrs. Johnson. Of course. Ellie sat, ordered a coffee too, and then said, You helped me when you didn't have to, when I was invisible. Thank you. I didn't do anything. Yes, you did. You saw me. You treated me like a human. And when you needed help, you trusted me. That means more than you know. Ellie pulled a card from her bag. I'm starting at Guangzhou Tech next week. We're going to need people on the administrative team. People I can trust. People who know how to treat others with respect. Interested? Chloe looked at the card, then at Ellie. The salary is? 40% more than you make now, plus benefits. I accept. My God, I accept. Ellie smiled. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile. Excellent. Send me your updated resume. 6 months later, Eleanor Johnson woke up in her new apartment. 2 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a balcony overlooking a park in Brooklyn Heights. It wasn't luxury, but it was light years better than the cramped flat in East New York. She made coffee, a routine she had grown to appreciate again now that she had the time and money for good coffee. She checked her phone. Brianna had sent a message. Today's the day, Mom. Love you. Today was the day. At 10 a.m., Ellie arrived at the community center in East New York, the same one where she used to pick up food stamps in bad months years ago. But this time, she wasn't receiving. She was giving. In the main room, 30 women waited. All low income. Janitors, cooks, caregivers, domestic workers. Invisible women. Good morning, Ellie began, standing in front of the makeshift classroom. My name is Eleanor Johnson. and I'm going to teach you how to speak English for free. Every Tuesday and Thursday for free. Because knowledge is the only thing they can't take away from you. Not poverty, not racism, not tragedy. What is in your mind is eternally yours. A woman in the second row, about 60, raised her hand timidly. But why do this? You don't gain anything. Yes, I do. I gain the certainty that maybe, when one of you gets the opportunity to show what she knows, she will be prepared. And maybe the world will have one less person being wasted. The classes began, and in the following 6 months, Ellie built more than she taught languages. She built a support network. Of the 30 initial students, 5 found better jobs using the English they learned. One became a bilingual receptionist with a $60,000 annual salary. Another got a remote job doing customer service for an American company. Guangzhou Tech USA, under Lu Wei's leadership with Ellie as her right hand, became a model for inclusion. The company made a point of hiring talent from underserved communities, people with difficult histories, and it invested heavily in training. The results followed. In 1 year, they were ranked as the best company to work for in NYC in the multinational category. Harrison Sterling never fully recovered. He remained on the Sterling Tech board, but his influence drastically diminished. His son, Ryan, implemented progressive changes that transformed the company culture. He created an internal development program that identified talent at all levels, including general services staff. 2 former janitors were promoted to administrative roles. One of the night security guards, who had incomplete accounting education, received a scholarship to finish his degree. Ellie was invited to lecture at 3 business schools on wasted human resources and unconscious bias in hiring. Her case became a study in MBA courses. And on a Tuesday, always a Tuesday 6 months after the confrontation in the conference room, Brianna Johnson graduated from law school. Ellie was in the audience, no longer hidden in the margins, no longer invisible. She wore the suit she had bought with her first real salary in 6 years. Beside her, Lu Wei, who had insisted on coming to support her, and Chloe, who was now more friend than colleague. When Brianna Johnson's name was called and she walked onto the stage, the girl looked for her mother in the audience. She found her and smiled. In her graduation speech, representing the class, Brianna said, "My mother taught me that dignity is not something others give you. It is something you carry inside yourself, even when the whole world conspires to make you forget." She carried dignity cleaning restrooms. She carried dignity being unjustly fired. And she carried dignity when, in the hardest moment, she chose to do the right thing even if it cost her. I am a lawyer today because this woman never gave up. Not on herself, not on me, nor on the bell. If that justice eventually prevails. Thank you, Mom. You are the strongest person I know. Ellie cried. They were tears of someone who went through hell and came out the other side not just a survivor, but victorious. A year after that confrontation in the conference room, Ellie received an unexpected letter. It was from Harrison Sterling. She almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. "Mrs. Johnson, I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it, but I hope you accept recognition of the error. I spent the last year in therapy, working to understand how I built an entire life on a toxic premise. That human worth is measured by money and position. You showed me, in the most humiliating way possible, that I was wrong. I cannot undo what I did, the humiliation I caused, the months of hardship I unnecessarily prolonged. But I can try to ensure it never repeats. I created a foundation with part of my personal savings. $3 million to offer scholarships for professional retraining to workers who fell into crisis, whether through widowhood, illness, or other tragedies. The name of the foundation? The Eleanor Johnson Institute, if you will allow it. I don't ask for friendship. I don't ask for absolution. I just ask that you accept that you changed a detestable life into a slightly less detestable life." Harrison Sterling 3. Ellie read it 3 times. Then she showed it to Brianna. "Can he use the name?" her daughter asked. Ellie thought. She thought of everything. The sleepless nights, the cut electricity, the daily humiliations. But she also thought about how her pain could now prevent the pain of others. "He can," she decided. If it helps people, he can use it. Eleanor Johnson's story eventually moved beyond corporate circles and reached traditional media. A short documentary about cases of wasted talent in low-level positions. A segment on 60 Minutes. A cover article in a business magazine. And every time she told her story, Ellie finished the same way. I was lucky. Lucky that a Chinese CEO valued education and character above appearances. Lucky that the son of the man who humiliated me had a conscience. But how many Ellies are out there who don't have that luck? How many brilliant people are cleaning, cooking, serving, while their competencies die from lack of opportunity? Not because they are incapable, but because an entire society decided that some people are worthy of being seen and others are not. She always finished with a challenge. Next time you encounter someone in a marginalized role, ask yourself, am I seeing this person? Really seeing them? Or just the uniform they wear? Because maybe, just maybe, you are wasting gold by treating it like trash. 5 years after that fateful Tuesday on the 23rd floor, Eleanor Johnson, now Director of Communications and Diversity at Guangzhou Tech USA, volunteer language professor, inclusion consultant and recognized speaker, was sitting in her spacious office overlooking Fifth Avenue when the intercom rang. Dr. Johnson, there's a Harrison Sterling here wanting to speak with you. No appointment scheduled. Should I turn him away? Ellie hesitated for just a second. No. Send him in. Harrison entered. He was older, grayer, more tired, but also somehow more human. Thank you for seeing me, he said, standing near the door. Sit. Ellie pointed to the chair in front of the desk. Why are you here? The foundation I created has helped 247 people return to the job market in recent years. 247 stories similar to yours. And every time I welcome a new scholarship recipient, I tell your story. I tell what I did. I tell how wrong I was. He took a deep breath. I came to say thank you. Thank you for what? For breaking me. For forcing me to see. I lived 52 years thinking I was good, great, important, and you showed me in 5 minutes in the conference room that I was small, petty, cruel. He looked at her directly. If you hadn't done that, I would have died being exactly who I was. And that would be a waste of life. Ellie was silent for a long moment. You asked if you could use my name for the foundation. I never officially replied. So here is my answer, yes. But with one condition, which is, every person who receives help from the foundation has to pay it forward. Not with money, but by coming back when they can and helping the next person in difficulty. Mentoring, advice, a shoulder, because that is the only way to truly change a system that breaks us. Every repaired link fixes the entire chain. Harrison nodded. Done. He stood up to leave. He stopped at the door. Turned around. You won, you know? Completely. And I'm not just talking about the job or the money or the recognition. You proved that class, race, poverty, none of that defines human worth. Competence doesn't wear a uniform. Dignity has no zip code. I learned that the hard way, but I learned. When he left, Ellie sat, looking out the window at the enormous city stretching in all directions. How many Ellies were down there, invisible, waiting for someone to see them? She picked up the phone, called the coordinator of the language program at the community center. Hi, Anna. It's me. I have an idea to expand the classes. Can we add Mandarin? I'll teach the classes myself. I think it's time. Because her story didn't end with personal victory. It ended with the decision to ensure that the next generation of Ellies wouldn't have to wait 6 years to be seen. And so, in that same building where she had been invisible for 6 months, where she had suffered humiliation, where she had discovered that doing the right thing doesn't always bring immediate reward, in that same place, now from the 25th floor, Eleanor Johnson looked at the city with certainty of one thing. Dignity is not what others give you. It is what you carry within yourself, even at rock bottom, even when no one is watching, even when it seems useless. And in the end, it is exactly that dignity that changes the world. One person at a time. And you, dear viewer? How many times have you walked past someone without truly seeing them? How many times have you looked at the uniform instead of the person? How many Ellies exist in your life, waiting only for a moment of recognition. Ellie's story teaches us something fundamental. Talent does not choose an address. Competence does not require an expensive diploma. And dignity, that essential quality that makes us human, lives in the hearts of people who still believe in doing the right thing, even when the world conspires to prove them wrong. If this story touched your heart, if you recognize that there is always more to a person than meets the eye, leave in the comments, "Dignity wins." These two simple words are a commitment to see people, not roles, to recognize value, not positions, to understand that the janitor can be a master's graduate, the cook can be a potential entrepreneur, and the security guard can be the next great leader your company is letting slip away. And now, the special request. If you value genuine stories of overcoming adversity, of justice being served, of people finally getting what they deserve, then you will love the next videos on this channel. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell, because every week we bring true narratives of people who transformed humiliation into victory, defeat into triumph, invisibility into recognition. Like this video so that YouTube shows it to more people who need to hear stories like Ellie's. Share this story, especially with that person in your life who is going through a difficult time, who is at rock bottom, who needs to remember that dignity is not lost. It is just temporarily forgotten by others, never by ourselves. And comment "Dignity wins" to build a community together that believes doing the right thing, even when it costs, always pays off. Thank you for watching until the end. Your presence here, your time, your attention, it honors not only Ellie, but all the invisible Ellies who need to be seen. Important disclaimer. This is a fictional story created for the purposes of entertainment and reflection on relevant social issues such as dignity, justice, and professional recognition. Any resemblance to real people, companies, or situations is purely coincidental. The characters and situations portrayed are products of artistic creation and should not be interpreted as factual events or as a representation of specific individuals. The purpose of this content is to inspire reflection on universal human values and not to promote any form of defamation, discrimination, or conflict. We appreciate your understanding and support for constructive content. We'll see you in the next video, where another incredible transformation story awaits you. Because the world is full of invisible heroes, and every one of them deserves to be seen.